So Stu,
Hi, Isaac.
what would you recommend for a young person who's tired of the club and partying scene in Thailand?
I think there's just very few options. There are places that exist that are more like clubhouses or places for young people to go without a lot of demand on their time and money. One great place is Game Tree Cafe. There's other places like hiking, for example, and there are some great cafes like while hiking, and there are some amazing outdoor spaces for people to go and reconnect with whatever they want to reconnect with.
What advice would you have for young guys looking for romance in Thailand?
Do not go to the club because there's no romance at the club. I think that you should live out loud, as I've said many times, that like if you're into hiking, if you're into painting, if you're into yoga, then you should find those spaces, and then hopefully you'll find a person that's interested in those same things in those spaces. So like for me as a board game owner, a lot of people come here because they don't really know how to start the conversation. And when you play a board game, you don't have to really think of something clever or witty to say because it's all right there on the table. And many people have hooked up, or even 3 people got married that have met at Game Tree before. So if you're looking for someone that's not super scummy, I think that finding a very low-key activity that you and the person that you want to meet will enjoy doing together is the best thing to do.
Right. And on the flip side, Thai women who are looking for a quality Western guy.
I think that board game shops are one of the best places because usually guys that come here are not very aggressive with their communications with women, and they're usually more respectful for people because they're more introverted people. In general, board gamers are more introverted, and they are usually more kind because board game is about messing up and watching your failures and trying to make something good out of a bad move, which is just life. That's just a great symbolic gesture. Board games are just life with, good moves and bad moves,
Right.
things like that. So if you're looking for like a really quality person, watch how they play board games, watch how they hike, watch how they do yoga, watch how they do their daily life. And when they mess up, that's who they really are, is when they mess up. And it's so interesting to see people just like, oh, they have that like crazy moment where they're just like, oh my God, I messed up,
Yep.
And then that can be like, missing your car payment kind of thing, right? So I love to see how people like really react when the chips are down or when the chips are, how people win or lose. That's such a great indicator about who they're going to be in a relationship.
Yeah, right. My next thought is questions about running a cafe. So it seems like, to me, with the number of board games you have, you'd eventually have chits go missing or have a game become unplayable because the cards are bent up. How much wear and tear? Because you've had this place open for years. Have you had to ditch a game because it's just too worn out?
I do have a few games that I have not ditched, but I have them in a special location because you can't play them anymore. There are pieces that are missing. There are chits that are missing, like you said. I have this one game called Kodama 3D where you actually build a physical tree, but the pieces are just like bent and you can no longer use them. And I don't want to throw it away, but I was like, but you can't play this anymore because you're missing, the owl apple tree branch thing.
Yeah.
And you really can't play it because it messes up all the shuffling and the synergy. But it definitely does happen. And there is a great thing called Lazada, and you can kind of buy secondhand or counterfeit games. If you just need that one little piece, it's great to have it's not 100% legitimate, but if you need that one extra house for Catan because it went off the board and stuff like that. But yeah.
Do you ever think that those old games have the good juju?
I do.
People have had so much enjoyment out of playing them, you want to keep them around?
I do, yes. Yeah, when I sold my first copy of Catan during COVID, it was very hard because this game has so many memories and so much good things. But the guy really wanted it, and it was COVID, so I was like, sure.
Yep.
But definitely things do go missing. We do our best to. We have a little tray for bits and bobs, and then I put them back in, and I usually know where they go, but not always. Sometimes it's a bit of a thinker. Where does this money chit go? I don't know. Yeah.
Now there's a trope in Western films of the guy standing up from the table and getting into the gunfight because somebody cheated. There's been no altercations over the outcomes of board games. No fist fights.
No
beer bottles smashed over the back of somebody's head.
There's definitely been loud words. There's definitely been like big hands on the table and screaming. Just the other week, there was a guy that just did not agree with how people were playing the game, and there was just very loud shouting and you're tricking me and all this. And I came in, I was like, hey, whoa, brother, whoa, it's okay, everything's fine, don't worry about it. But yeah, some people do just kind of get up and leave, especially if they thought they were going to win and they get second and they're just so sour about that. They just like stand up, like walk to the door, like throw money and leave, slam the door, just like, ugh, ugh, ugh.
How often does that happen? I've never seen someone rage quit a board game like that, though.
It happens maybe like once every 2 months. On the same side of the coin, if you're playing like a really long strategic game and someone plans to do something in such a fashion, and then they realize halfway down that path that actually what they're doing is not allowed by the rules, that is when they get very angry. Because they're, and they get so frustrated. And, you know, at any time, it's like, you can always ask me questions, but sometimes when I'm playing the game, people are like, I don't want to ask you a question because I think you're going to stab me in the back, which usually happens to me instead of the other way. But yeah, definitely people do get angry with the longer games or the games that have more thought process.
Right.
People usually don't get very like bent out of shape if they lose a game of Exploding Kittens or Uno or something. Right. But if it's that longer, over 2 hours, people definitely can get their feathers really up. That's why we try and always make sure people are like having little snacks and like, have you had some water in a while? Because if you're playing a 3-hour game, maybe you haven't had any water, you're dehydrated, and you know all your levels are messed up. So you definitely need to drink water and have snacks when you play board games for a long period of time.
Right.
You're doing a lot of thinking.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
How fun? There is a built-in antagonism when you're playing a game against other people. There may be some cultural side where they are uncomfortable with that. How do you see that play out with people playing against other people and
like different nationalities and stuff?
Different nationalities and like maybe people come in, they haven't played a game before. They're going, oh, someone else is trying to beat me.
I have 2 fun stories that are like both similar but different. One game, we're playing a very large space game called Eclipse. And there was some Chinese people, like 3, and there were 3 non-Chinese people. And one guy, he was like, please stop speaking Chinese. I think you are ganging up. Please stop speaking Chinese so I don't think that you're going to gang up on me. And they're like, okay, we'll stop speaking Chinese. And then they totally did not stop speaking Chinese. And they totally did gang up, and they just demolished the other players. And one of those Chinese people won, and that guy was so angry. He was like, I told you, you were ganging up on me. I knew you were colluding. And it was like, yes, they are obviously colluding. And he got very angry, and it was like, I'll never play with you ever again. And I was like, that is totally fair. I don't want to play with them either. However, it was 2 of those Chinese people's first game, and so I kind of understand they were leaning on that more veteran player to guide them through and help them out. However, I was totally waiting for that veteran player to stab both of them in the back and just take their unprotected territory. I was expecting just a total wormhole ripper and just come through their territory like a storm. Second game, similar example. This was years ago, before I had the game shop, maybe 10 years ago. Game of Thrones, the board game, just came out. And it was super popular. And me and a buddy, Victor, we heard about a place they played board games. Not a shop, a place. And it was more like a sala. It was just a roof, you know, with people playing board games under a roof. So we drove there on our mopeds, and guys were trying to set up Game of Thrones, and Victor and I were like, yes, we totally want to play. Now, this is 10 years ago. This is before you could just like get the rule book and Rodney Smith and watch you play, way before all that stuff. So we were like, okay, you guys will just teach us. And in good faith, we thought they were going to teach us the game. That did not happen. And they totally, again, they just schemed and they told us really bad ideas and then just totally took advantage and they just tromped us.
Yep.
But the game is weird because there can only be one winner. So it was like we were out of the game and we just got up and left because we were out. We're like, okay. And I had such a bad taste in my mouth for almost 5 years with that game.
Yep.
I was like, I'm not playing it. Like last time I played it, it was so bad. And I was in Singapore for Board Game International Day. And I played with some people there, and they were so nice, and they brought back like the fun to that
Right.
game. But sometimes you do have people that come in and they think it's us versus them kind of mentality, and it's something that I don't really like to promote at Game Tree.
Right.
I like people to play together. When we first opened, the idea that my wife is Thai and I'm a foreigner was that people could come together and meet people, and that's been a really hard mission that we still trudge on to make together, because the way Thai society is, it's very communal, and you stay in your group and in your lane, and breaking your group to go play with someone else is not really a part of their tradition.
Right.
Well, Western tradition is like, hey, how you doing? Let's play a game.
Right. Walk into the game cafe by yourself and be like, I wonder what strangers I'm going to meet today.
Exactly. So you have just different like mindsets kind of coming in, and sometimes they clash and sometimes they don't, and then sometimes you'll meet a Thai or Chinese or whatever Asian person, and they're just like, I want to play games so badly.
Right.
I'm willing to like throw this normal operating system out the window, and I will play with anybody. I had this one Chinese guy, he was like, I just want to play Terraforming Mars. I don't care who I play with, I don't care what language they speak, I just want to play Terraforming Mars. And he was so happy, came in, people to play with, and he was very surprised that everyone wanted to know about him and know about his experience with the game and what characters and what strategies. And he was like, well, usually in China, where he played, like no one really talks. It's very like fisticuffs and knives in the dark and everything. And I was like, this is so chill.
Right.
And that's the thing what people, they don't really know that they're going to get when they come into the shop, is a very chill, welcoming atmosphere where it's kind of like Cheers. You know, everybody knows your name and wants to be buddy, and like, yeah, people will go and they'll go to the bar after they leave the shop, or they'll say, hey, tomorrow let's go for a hike, or you want to go do this or that, and friendships just happen all the time. And that's one thing that I really love about running the shop is you kind of sit back and be like, I made that friendship happen. Good day at the office. And that's a very rare thing to do at your workplaces, provide a place for friendships to grow. I think it's pretty awesome.
Right. So, years ago, you left behind your comfortable lifestyle and your friend groups, and you went to work at a place where, when you come back to visit, after months of being away, you'd be absolutely miserable, and then you go back, and you come back absolutely miserable. So that was a long time that you were earning the money to open this shop.
Oh, okay.
Would you say that was worth it now that you've
Yes.
had the place open?
Yes. So what Isaac is talking about is I used to work at a university. That's where we met. And then I went to Saudi Arabia. We could say it's fine again. And I worked at universities there, which made a lot more money. And then I came here and I used the money to open the shop. I think originally I wanted to say a third year because I could have bought more of the mortgage out. Staying for a third year, and it made me want to do this even more. Like, I think if I would have jumped right from like university professor to like whatever I am now, I think there just would have been too little time to evolve the idea, because I spent almost a year just designing these tables. You know, just looking, watching, because in Saudi Arabia, the internet is almost like 1/10 of what we get in Thailand. Is so slow. So I spent so much time just with paper and pencil, like trying to design the best, cheapest, easily accessible table, you know, with these good cup holders and everything. So I think that the time away, really dedicating myself to, do I really want to do this? Is this what I really want to do? Is really good. It's usually like people that, you know, they run a long race and they're like, you know what? I need to open a smoothie shop or whatever, you know, like they come away with that type of clarity. And for me, it was very much the same. Like, I was very excited after doing 2 years in the sand, like, okay, I'm back, I want to do this. However, that things that we've kind of hinted on, Thailand is very, very transitional. There's people in and out all the time. And so a lot of people that I had made friendships with, and good colleagues. I came back after 2 years and they were gone.
Right.
Even more so, they just were not at the same place in their life. Like I had left and they were, step 7, and I came back and anticipating them to still be on step 7, and then now they're on step 13, and maybe their relationship is no longer as solid as it used to be because we've changed so much. And that's one of the really nice parts about Game Tree is that I have people that come every year from places like Denmark or Bali or America, and they'll come every year to Chiang Mai and to Game Tree, and they like that it's kind of like the same.
Right.
Even though we change things all the time, but like someone's here to welcome them, to teach them games, and we have a lot of games that usually are very popular globally. So like I have one guy that he comes in every year, and he teaches in the Middle East. He's an IT guy in the Middle East, and he comes every year for 2 weeks, and he just plays Dune. He's like, I don't care what other people play. I just want to play Dune every day.
Yep.
And those kinds of people you never think you're going to meet on the way. You think that maybe, you're the game shop owner or whatever, like you're kind of like the head of the parade. But in reality, you're at the back of the parade, kind of like pushing everyone forward. And the more that I've learned how to give that leadership to other people, the easier my job has become.
Right.
But yeah, it's very, those 2 years in the desert, as you said, like were very positive for like my personal growth as well. Difficult on a marriage, of course, because you're away and everything. But it's sometimes good sitting in a hard place thinking like, is this what I really want to do? And I think a lot of young men should do that. Just like do something really hard, and it'll give you time to think about what you want to really do next in life.
I would say that your specialty, like what makes Game Tree different than other cafes, is your teaching style and how you teach a game.
Sure, yeah. So,
So what's your short course, your bullet points on how to teach a board game so people are able to learn how to play that game?
Yeah, well, first learn the rules. And however you do that is up to you. If it's watching a video or reading the rule book or skimming the rule book, then watching the video, I always say, whatever works for you, do that. I can only tell you what works for me. So we're gonna just talk about teaching a game real quick.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do is I try and get everybody's attention. I have very loud, snappy fingers, and I try and like make eye contact with everybody. This is something that people don't really see me doing, but I do it every single time. This is Catan. You kind of like set the stage. You get everybody focused. People put down their phones. I love that when the phones go away, and then I tell them in a very clear way, like, what is the game? Like, we're gonna be spreading out and making our empire, and then how you win the game is the most important thing. And you tell them how to win the game. For example, Catan is 10 points, right? 10 points. And then whenever I explain anything, I always do a check-in with, okay, well, this gives you 2 points for Longest Road. How many points you need to win?
Right.
And I always try and get this like teaching methodology, people to chime in. And so they are saying, oh yeah, we need 10 points. Oh, this is 2. So this is this. And making them a part of like the rules discovery.
Right.
Try and frame it as like, I'm just kind of like walking them on the path. So
And less of a lecture.
Yes, yeah, you want people to interact as much as possible. If you give someone a card, ask them to read it. If you give them a thing, ask them to make it nice. Like, put them to work. People say I always give jobs, which is fine, or chores, but never give someone a piece, a bit, a card, and not have them interact with it in some way is absolutely horrible. So yeah, tell them like what the game's about. That's the theme, more or less, and then how to win, and then how do you get those points? So going on with the Catan example, you get 10 points. One way is by building cities, but cities must come from settlements. Settlements are 1 point, cities are 2 points. Longest Road, 5 gives you 2. Longest Army gives you 2, etc. So, and you keep on bringing it back to how to win the game, how to win the game, how to win the game. Then the last thing I do is I teach them what to do on a turn. And I have a big pause. And then I say, on your turn, you first do this. Roll the dice. Pause. Second thing, nice loud snap. Second thing on your turn, you do this. Pause. Loud snap. Third thing. And then I'll have them repeat that back to me. And because I teach games so much, I know the rules they are gonna fuff up. I know they're gonna fuff this up. And I'll look at the person that's not paying attention the most, and I'll say, Steven. You can only build inside your network. Can you say that, Steven? No, I don't want to say. No, just say it, Steven. Oh, you can only build your network. And then I look at Jules. Jules, and how do we define our network? Whatever you're touching or someone touching. Okay, cool. And then 45 minutes later, and then someone's like, what? And I'll say, Steven, can you build outside your network? And then no, I cannot build outside my network. And people love that. People love that, like, I'll just tell them the future. And that shows mastery of your craft when you know the problems of the newly established people in the game world.
How long after acquiring a new game does it take you to get to that level with a given game?
I think there's two parts to the answer. One is how interested I am in the game. Like, if I'm totally like, oh, like just juicing at the gills to get to that game, then like maybe a day, and I'll read all the rules and I'll watch people play and I'll watch rules overview and I'll take it all in. But if I get a game that I'm kind of ho-hum about, or especially if it was on Kickstarter and like my interest is just like to the floor, sometimes it's like a month. Because if it's a big game, then I have to like really grab people and be like, hey, we're gonna play, Mephistopheles on Tuesday, whatever, and like really get people in. I think the last game that was like that was a very big space game called Voidfall. And it took me 3 plays, so around 7 or 8 hours to actually really know the game. So the 4th time I taught the game, I was like Spider-Man. But I spent 3 hours just watching and reading and setting up and moving things and what happens if this happens. And I'll often play a game, they call it two-handed. Well, you play by yourself, but I'll write a notebook like, these guys are super aggressive, these guys are super economics, so I try and play the games by myself and just try and push that button as far as I can, because I know someone's gonna come in and be like, I just wanna wreck stuff, So for me, it could be like 3 hours, it could be 45 minutes, depending upon the complexity of the game and depending upon how much of that game has known mechanics. So for example, if a game feels or is very much in the vein of Splendor or Ticket to Ride, where it has set collection, then I'm just like, oh, it's this ingredient, this ingredient, this ingredient, and then I just need to look for the small exceptions. So some games are more of like cut and paste, while other games like brand new crazy stuff, which take way longer to learn. And then
how often would you say that the new crazy stuff that the board game uses is actually effective for it as a product, as an experience? Is it normally just like, here's a new extra thing to learn, and it's worth it, or this is some baggage? So it's like a fantasy world using a bunch of proper nouns.
Okay, I wanna repackage that real quick. So you're saying like, when I come across a game with a new mechanic
that's like trying to do its own unique thing.
Yeah, it's a new mechanic. It's like deck building with Jeffrey Zaccarino when he made Dominion. Yeah. So for example, there's a game called Andromeda's Edge, and they have this really interesting worker placement. But then when you pull in, you get all these other buffs and bonuses, which are really cool, but also a little confusing. And the game definitely is built upon that pull in, because usually on a worker placement game, when you pull in, nothing happens. You've already gotten all of your resources or whatever they are. So in this game, you get resources or something when you put the spaceship on the map, and then when you pull them in and then you assign them to a row, then they activate that row. Most of the time, if a new mechanic is not front and center, it's a waste of time. If a new mechanic isn't like the heartbeat of the game, it probably shouldn't be there. And I feel that way a lot with Andromeda's Edge. Like, there's just too many wheels that are kind of spinning, and it's hard to really say like, I'm gonna do this. For example, like last night in Brass has a super weird scoring system, but once you know you're gonna make more points building railroads or boats than buildings, you're like, cool, I wanna do this. And that mechanic is front and center. You're like, man, Carlos is destroying all the routes. Because it's a route building game. But it looks so different than like your typical route building game like Ticket to Ride or Via Nebula. The routes don't look the same, they don't feel the same. So yeah, sometimes with new mechanics, if they're not front and center, if they're not like the heartbeat of the game, they don't get the shine that they need. Another
It's
really,
like a different mechanic in Mario.
yes, you're like, oh, this is now a shadow world, but it's only
Yeah.
for 5 minutes, so who cares?
Right.
I always like it when games, they just kind of do one thing really, really well. And usually those are the games that hit the table more often. Game designers, like Castle Combo, like Splendor, like Azul, games have like a central mechanic and kind of everything is secondary to that mechanic. Usually that's the kind of the games that can play the most.
Have you heard the news that Simon, a game publisher, is going completely out of business?
Yes.
Good.
I'm,
It is time for the board game bubble to pop.
I'm
The
excited.
chit inflation has
Crazy.
gone too far.
Yes, I agree with you. There is a large company that has bought up other small companies, and for about 10 years or 8 years, there hasn't been a lot of really cool things coming out of the major designing houses because they've all been bought up and they're all conglomerates. For example, one of my favorite games for a long time was Memoir 44. They've had multiple anniversaries and no cool stuff. No cool new box, no 20th anniversary, no nothing. And I'm excited that some of the bigger houses are failing and smaller companies are going to be able to fill those niches with maybe more interesting ideas and less just plastic glut. Yeah, and that's not nice to say. People are going to lose their jobs and everything, but that's part of the whole business. Is you grow, you make good or bad decisions, and then you flourish, die, or transcend. There have been a handful of board game CMON expos in Southeast Asia, and they've been really trying to pump the sales in Southeast Asia, Thailand especially, because we're the most stable country. However, CMON does not understand the Thai demographic at all. The Thai demographic is mostly party games or very high no-luck strategy games. That's kind of the Thai market, and it took me a long time to figure this out. And CMON just keeps on pushing big plastic Amerithrash games that just are not really in the Thai mindset or the Thai version of fun. You know, they love coup. You know, they love Werewolf. Those are the games that they like to play, and that's fabulous and amazing. And on the other side, they like to play games like Brass or Terraforming Mars. They like to play games with almost no luck. And CMON has pretty much been in the middle, and they spend millions of dollars trying to build up interest in Thailand. They brought over Tom Vassell, which is like the biggest person in board game media, you know, to promote and be a part of the thing and to sell more stuff, but it's just not there.
How much of a budget do you think you would need, both for making the product and maybe marketing? Do you think you could make the next big board game for Thailand? And what game would that be?
I think that if you were gonna intentionally make a board game for the Thai demographic, you would want it to be relatively cheap MSRP, in dollars, like no more than $15 or $20, no more than that. Mostly cards, bluffing, very few pieces, and something that can play well, this is crazy, between 3 and 20. You know, that's what you would want. You would want a game that is pretty small, to put in a bag or a pocket, because most time Thais are on motorbikes and going around. So you'd want a small game, mostly cards, bluffing, or some type of trader mechanic. And that's what you'd want, like maybe a game like Good Cop, Bad Cop, or Spyfall. You want something like this, because Thais, for the most part, want extremely fast fun because they've been on their phone so much. That's kind of the fun they expect. They don't want rules overhead.
Right.
So I would make something with cute art, cats or whatever, but then have lying, have bluffing, have a traitor, these very known tropes. And again, if you can think of something new to add into that, that's even better. But I would make something very small, almost insta-fun. For me, when I have new groups, especially Thais coming in, but also foreigners, they don't know each other, I give them cat, goat, cheese, taco, pizza. It's a very small, you know, card game, but something like this. This is what you would want to make. It's small, can go anywhere, put it in your pocket, and it can play. It doesn't matter. The rules are a single card
Yep.
That's what you would want to make. Nothing crazy, almost no board, or maybe even use the pack as the board, but you wouldn't want anything elaborate. It's not going to sell. And if you can make it for $5 and sell it for $15, that's what you would want to do. Yeah, just something very simple but engaging. Salem, for example,
Right.
Is a good example of that as well. Yeah.
What was your biggest purchase regret? You're like, I should never have bought this game. This time I spent learning it was a waste. And when did that moment hit?
I mean, the most recent one I think is Voidfall, where there's 200 symbols in the game, and you basically have to learn the symbols to be able to play the game. Not even well, just play the game because it's just symbology. I don't know, maybe that game was $300, maybe $400, but it was just too hard to table. It was too hard to teach. So yeah, I think the biggest board game regret I currently have or had would be maybe that game.
When did you realize that it was a mistake?
When I was trying to teach it the sixth time to new people, and I realized that the amount of words I had to say was too many. It's like, there's only 8 cards, so it appears to be straightforward, but each card has 3 actions, but you're only going to do 2 actions, and then you have to explain all 24 actions. And then there are other cards, the scoring cards, that have no words, weird images and the icons. And to be able to play the game well, I mean, Voidfall is a fun game if you can get through all of that. But it's kind of like, okay, I need games that are a little bit more simpler than that. But there's another game that I didn't even open. It was even worse than that. It was so big, it was taller than my son.
You just saw the box and went, no.
I just saw the box and I was like, no, that's just. And I looked around, I was like, where is this going to even go? Where is this box going to live? And I sold it. I think I sold it within 15 minutes of posting it on Facebook Marketplace. But I was like, this is just too big. And now I've really come around to games that can just be played faster to create good memories and good group cohesion.
Yep.
And I feel like I have enough games already to give people a fantastic time together that I don't really need to be chasing the new. I say that, however, I do watch Board Game Media, and I do want to buy the $191 Agricola on Kickstarter, or GameFound. But yeah, it's just, once you kind of understand as a business owner, like your clientele, the personal aspect really falls away quickly.
Yep.
A game that we played a long time ago, Zaya, for example. Remember, maybe we played that with Luke and maybe your brother, I don't remember exactly. I've only taught that game 3 times.
Yep.
I will not teach that game. It's too long. Now, if I am at a cabin and it's just me and 2 or 3 other guys, hey, all right, let's play that game.
Yep.
But there's certain games I just won't teach because it's too much.
What is a game that you wish you could get people to play and it just doesn't happen?
It's over there. There's like a whole area of that. I have that. So like, for example, like Western Legend is a great example of just too much rules overhead. The game is simplistic to play, but like there's just so much. And because I have the everything box and people want to play everything, it's just, even picking your character takes too flippin' long. And the insert's horrible. So games I wish would play more would be like Great Western Trail, Deus, Endeavor, Power Grid, Nations, Last Light, Libertalia, like a lot of them over there. Emotep, on that bottom area, Empires of the North. But I know why they don't get played. I know why that they kind of stick to the shelf and they don't stick to the table. Because there's something about the rules overhead, there's something about the iconography, there's something about the way the game feels that people just kind of bounce off it, or it's not enough of what they want. For example, like Deus. The game looks horrible. And the rulebook is written in a weird, cuneiform Arabic, like, it just doesn't really make sense. But if you watch a video, you're like, this is so easy.
Yep.
So that game, the map just looks like bleh. And then the mechanics are super interesting. And that's an example of a game that has core mechanic is you lay a card in a color row and you take all the actions, but you can only have so many cards in that row. And that's really cool. No other game I've ever seen, maybe Canar kind of does that. But this is like a Civilization light game. So you are attacking and building out your empire and stuff. And I really like the game, but it's so hard to get to the table. And just the way it looks, people are like, this looks horrible. And when you put a game down,
Right.
look is the first thing.
I'd never thought about doing the what mobile games do, where they just reskin it and release your own version.
I wish, yeah, I should do that. And Nations is a similar kind of thing. Like, it's a good Civilization game, but it's cards. And usually when you say Civilization, people think there's going to be war, there's going to be fighting, where are the nukes at? And in Nations, doesn't have that.
Right.
So people are like, oh, there's no like conflict, but this is a
Right.
Civilization game.
The name of the game sets a lot of expectations.
True. Tapestry was the same way. Tapestry came out, they're like, this is Civilization Light, Light, but it should be Like, like, because in that game you can only fight a very few amount of times, and the board state isn't as important as a game like Civilization would be on the PC. So it's more like town-based, because you have a little town. And I remember playing that game being so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be my new mojo. And I played it and I was instantly disappointed because I came in with this like very wrong mindset of what the game was gonna be. So usually when I put games in front of people, I kind of tell them 2-minute, 1-minute commercial, like what to expect from the game, like what kind of emotions or what are you going to do mechanically, to kind of set those expectations. Like, this is a slappy game, you're going to be laughing in 5 minutes, but okay, 5 minutes, I'm expecting to laugh, right? Where like, hey, this is a nation building game where you're going to not be fighting directly, but indirectly, so then people can kind of curb their desire to have or not have that game,
What is your most played?
Splendor. Splendor is the most played game by far, historically. Now, games like Castle Combo, games like Arnak are definitely giving it a run for its money in the current month. But Splendor, Azul, these have been like the most popular games to get to the table the most. It's a weird conversation because you have TI4, they can play for 12 hours, so does that count like as time play or is that one play? For a long time, TI4, we used to play it every month, sometimes twice a month, and that's a 8, 10, 12-hour game. But with games like this or Azul, Splendor, Canar, Castle Combo, these are very fast, 20, 45-minute games. You get to the table, mostly iconography, anybody can play, and they usually play it twice. First time just learning, and the second time they can really put the mustard down. That's not a saying.
You put a lot of time into, a group comes in, they don't know what game they want to play, and you essentially have to pick the game for them.
True, yeah.
How often do you go, that was the wrong game?
About 1 out of 50. About 1 out of 50. So I know when I'm wrong very quickly. I'm like, ooh. So like as a game sommelier, that's what you just described, someone that picks the game or helps people picks games. There is a hard...
And you'd usually notice that while teaching it to them. Like their eyes glaze over.
Their eyes glaze over. They don't know the words. What is a turn? What is a round? When someone says, I want to do this in a very strong conviction way, I'll say, great, no problem. I disagree with you, but let me get you that game that you want.